Learn how to create, sustain, and scale up your print-on-demand business with the latest tips, guides, and strategies to help you start selling and making money today. Welcome to the Sales on Demand Show. And here's your host, Adam Schneider.
Dear Diary, this may be my last entry. The last 7 days have been the longest decade of my life. It's almost like we live on a new planet now. Everywhere. The zombies are coming. Well, I'm prepared. I went to the store yesterday. I had to fight them off everywhere. Everywhere you look. Gangs of cats and dogs and hamsters running around, stealing people's toilet paper. Who would have thought? The one thing they're after is the one thing that everybody wanted. Toilet paper. I can't handle it. Tomorrow, I'm going to take off my gloves and go out. I'm going to lick the poles. I just don't want to be here anymore. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sales on Demand Show. I hope you enjoyed our performance of The Last Diary by me. What a crazy 7 years the last week has been. There's nothing like this has ever happened in my living memory. I was telling my kids, I'm like, this is not normal. Like, nobody's ever gone through any of this, and quite frankly, it's distressing to see what's been happening and how people are reacting to it, and it's raised the anxiety level of literally every human probably on planet Earth, but certainly in the first world nations, because while disease is still pretty common and people dying of disease is very common in third world countries, which of course is going down as those countries develop and start eating better and practicing hygiene. They still have quite a significantly higher death rate from disease, car accidents, all that kind of thing. It's much higher in developing nations, so they're kind of used to that. But here, we're just not used to any of this, and it's really driving people crazy. Even though, realistically, like, it's not worse than World War II. People are mentally comparing it to, some of the wars and some of the worst things that have ever happened in the history of human beings. I mean, at least in the last 100 years. I'm sure, when Genghis Khan ravaged, basically the entire known world and killed about 9 million people, that probably was worse than this, but nobody remembers that. This is the worst thing that's happened to me in terms of what I've been seeing. Even 9/11 was not this crazy. And 9/11 was crazy. I mean, they shut down everything for like 2 weeks. Airports and travel were shut down, but people weren't locked in their homes or anything. So, I just thought I'd talk about some of the things that you can do right now to go out and fight both the stress and the anxiety, the economic contraction of this. Is there anything that you can do? I mean, many people are stuck at home. And as much as, having an unforeseen vacation, in many cases is kind of fun, this isn't a vacation. This is quarantine. as far as I can tell, there are about 11 or 12 states that have issued shelter-in-place orders. And I think, so that's New York, California, Illinois, I thought I saw Virginia. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be another, Pennsylvania. This is just unforeseen, crazy stuff, and there's a lot of misinformation rolling out there. So I thought I'd talk about some things that I learned that are true, just so that you can make balanced and informed decisions about what you're going to do with your life, and then things that you can do to prepare your family for what's coming in the future. And this is, again, I have no idea what the next 4 months is going to look like. Nobody does. Nobody does. There is just no way to predict this. Ordinarily, I could tell you that, you're going to see this, that happen. People are going to start doing, they're going to start getting ready for camping. They're going to be graduating from school. None of that's happening this year. It's crazy. All right, so we'll just start with 5 things that I've learned that are actually true. So the number one thing I've learned is that the coronavirus is a real virus. Okay, I know I have people in my Facebook feed who are saying that this is basically a bad cold. And they're like, well, lots of people die of the flu every year. It's like, okay, listen, that's true. This is worse than the flu, and it's way worse than the cold, than getting a cold. It is true that many colds are, in fact, coronaviruses, but this one is worse than those. It is a respiratory disease. And while many people who experience this will go through, minor symptoms, there is a significant number of people who get this where the effects are kind of permanent. Especially for someone like me, my livelihood depends on my ability to be physical if I need to be, to run fast and to lift things or do things. And what I've been hearing is that there's a risk of getting scarring in your lungs that permanently decreases your ability to breathe hard and do physical activity. So I don't want this. I do not want this virus, and I will do whatever it takes for me not to get this. So I am practicing all of the things, the social distancing, the hand washing things. I've been working on not touching my hands to my face, especially when I'm out. So, I told you before that the virus, it can only live on your hands for about 5 minutes. Well, that means when you go out and you're going to the grocery store, like, for the love of God, be as careful as you can about not touching everything in sight. And it's hard to do that. I know it's hard to do that. So that's just what I'm doing. So the number 2 thing I've learned is that there is so much that we do not know about this disease. We know a bit, but there is a ton that we don't know. When you look at the effects, look at different countries, and you see that Italy is being smashed. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, Italy. We don't want to be Italy. It's like, okay, well, it's kind of like looking at the death rate in Thailand from traffic deaths. It's like, yeah, a lot of people die in traffic accidents in Thailand. Far more than die here in North America. So should we just not drive because a lot of people die from traffic accidents? Or is there just a lot of variation? Are there other factors at play here? Obviously there are. But everybody is treating this like Italy is the destination of every country. And yeah, Italy is bad. I mean, if Italy's the worst and Germany's the best, chances are that every country is going to fall somewhere in the middle there. Now, I don't know what's happening in Africa. I don't think Africa is releasing a lot of information about this, so it's probably likely that this is rampaging through Africa as well. I don't know. I can't worry about that. But let's just, there's a lot of information on both ends of this thing. So there are some people out there who are saying that up to 70% of the world's population will get this, and that, 60 million people will die of it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I don't believe that, because this isn't significantly worse. I mean, the death rate for SARS was huge, and the death rate for MERS, which I don't know anything about, is also huge. Ebola is bad. Those are all very deadly diseases. But, 70% of the world's population isn't contracting those diseases. They got it under control. Now, this one obviously got out of control, and, the Chinese government is to blame for that. So, if you are angry at Trump about calling this the Chinese virus, well, the Chinese government is responsible for the fact that everybody's getting this. They lied and withheld the information. They knew the information. They were not confused about the fact that this was transmissible. They need to be held accountable for this. And if somebody's got to hang up on a pole and, be taken out of the planet, hey, man, you know what? You caused the deaths of millions of people. So, sure. The death penalty probably would be too good for you. Anyway, so lots of misinformation. And some of the misinformation I've been seeing is that because there's so many false positives on tests, that there is no virus and that it's a hoax and that they're using this to seize control of the economy. Look, I know that's an appealing thing to think, but, this isn't a hoax, okay? There is a real contagion, and it's working its way through some populations, not everywhere. Okay, there are some people who are behaving and, acting like everybody already has this, and that it's like it's blanketed over every surface that we touch. It's like corona is everywhere, so just don't touch anything. And there's people saying, like, don't go to the park because the virus can live for 3 days on plastic. So that's stupid. Okay, and I'll explain why in a few seconds here. So the third point is social distancing does make sense, okay? So this whole social distancing thing, I know everybody's like, maybe it almost seems like a religious thing, right? The sacrament of social distancing is part of this, disease reduction religion. It does make sense. And then, in the Bible, there's actually a lot of talk about social distancing for people who have disease. If you were a leper in the Bible, you had to yell unclean, and you weren't allowed to live in the city. You had to go out and, live in a community of other people who had leprosy or communicable diseases. So that does make sense. Okay, but a little bit actually goes a long way. A little bit of social distancing. So, and this is kind of important to make a note about, because all of these communities and these states that are just locking everybody down, that's not going to last long, right? So everybody seems to think that, okay, if we stay inside for 2 weeks, then we can just go out and do whatever we want. That is not true. That's not how this is going to work. That's not how disease works, okay? So the virus exists on planet Earth now, right? So it's not going away, just like the flu is not going away. So sitting inside and waiting for the boogeyman to leave, the elephant is already inside the tent. He's not leaving. So closing your eyes and holding your hands over your face is not going to make the elephant go away. But you don't have to, touch the elephant and be near the elephant. I don't know if this is a really good analogy, but it's the only thing I can think of. This is not going to disappear after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 10 weeks. But what we need to do is find a way to go about our normal lives while living with this. So I'm talking about these rules about social distancing where people are literally freaking out about 2 kids playing together at a park. And there's been some rules put in place even at my own job that are just like what? Come on. So, before I tell you this story, let me preface it with this. I love my job. The people I work with are fantastic people. They are human. So they're prone to all of the human foibles like, overreacting, underreacting, whatever. So there's a rule put in place at my work that, if you work in this building, then you're not supposed to go into the other building. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? The less we mix everybody up, especially in workplaces with a lot of people, if everybody kind of keeps their distance and you don't have to go into someone's office and cough on their desk. If you want to have a meeting, go stand, outside of their office and just talk. It's easy to work around these restrictions as long as you maintain that common sense. But, we have a wash bay, like a place you wash your cars and trucks and work vehicles. And so I drove in there, and I was ready to disinfect my truck. I do this every week. I take some disinfectant rags out, and I just wipe everything down that I touch, right? The computer, the windows, the buttons, everything that's in the vehicle. Just I want, a clean vehicle. I like to be in a vehicle that's clean and tidy, and I take care of my stuff. So someone came out and said, "Oh, you can't be in here. This is the shop's area, and you're not part of the shop. So we can't risk cross-contamination." And I looked around this giant wash bay. There's room for like 3 vehicles in there. And I'm like, but there's nobody in here right now. Like, I mean, I understand the need to not mingle, but like, I need to have a clean vehicle to keep myself healthy. Like, getting a bunch of road grime and stuff, it's not healthy for me. I mean, it's not just the coronavirus I'm worried about. There's other kinds of, there's bacteria and all kinds of like gross stuff everywhere, Plus, I need to be able to see out of my windows, and, my lights need to be visible. What's the problem here? So he's like, all right, I'll go talk to the boss and see. And he did, and came back, and he's like, no, you can't wash your truck in here. I was like, well, fine. I mean, that just left me dumbfounded, because there's no risk, right? When I pick up the wash wand thing, I'm wearing gloves. I'm the only one in the room. There's so little risk with that it's, incalculable. You can't calculate the risk of that because it's so low. And the same thing goes with, having your kids go to the park. Now, if the park is busy, if you got a lot of kids in the neighborhood, yeah, you don't want to be like sending your kids to the park to lick all the poles. But in the town that I live in, there's not a ton of kids, and none of them have been at the park because it's kind of still wintertime. Like, there's snow everywhere. So the idea that my kids can't go and play on playground equipment that nobody's touched for a week because the virus can live on metal or plastic for up to 3 days. So let me talk about that for a sec. Okay. Yes, they did a test, and they found that some virus particles can survive on steel and plastic for up to 3 days. Do you know where that was? It was indoors in a laboratory environment. Less than 5% of the original virus was still viable, and whatever was still there was probably heavily degraded, okay? You're not going to pick up, there's not a huge risk of picking up the virus from touching things. The risk is when you've got somebody who's infectious nearby, and they're literally, spraying out. Even if they're breathing on you, that's still not good, because there's little flecks of spit in your breath. That's where your 99.9% of the transmission is occurring, through people breathing on someone else, or they're preparing something and handing it to someone else, and you're literally touching something that someone handled like right there. Or, you go into the grocery store and someone coughs on the bread and you touch it, stick your fingers in your mouth. Yeah, that's where you're most likely to get that. Okay, but if there's virus on plastic and it's like 1% of the virus or 5% of the virus is left, you can actually go out and clean that. If you're really concerned about kids going to the park and getting the virus, take a bottle of diluted bleach with you and just hose that sucker down. I mean, bleach is going to kill the virus, right? what I'm trying to say is that we have to live our lives in the midst of this virus. We cannot just lock ourselves in our houses for 8 to 12 months and then, hope that it goes away. We've got to adopt some middle ground, because we do need to slow down the spread, but we also need to live our lives. Kids need playtime, they need exercise, they need time with their friends, and it makes more sense to adopt strict rules while allowing those things to happen than to just say, no play dates, no playtime, because the more that this builds up, the more that kids stay indoors and they're just desperate to get out there, the less likely they are to actually follow any rules once the lockdowns are over, right? The more tightly you lock everything down, the more that people are just going to go nuts when they're let out of the lockdown. And you're already seeing this. There's kids down in Miami who are just I don't care. I am enjoying spring break. Now, I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. It is pretty stupid because, we're right in the middle of the worst of it. But at the same time, I guess I do understand the mentality of there's kids out there that'll you know what? Let me get this now. If it's true that 70% of the population is going to get it, and these kids are well, the symptoms are minor, so why don't I just contract it now and get it out of the way? Then I'm immune. Then I don't have to worry about spreading it to other people. I actually see the point of that. I don't know if that's the right way to do this, because I just don't think that it's as simple as I'm young, so it's safe for me. I mean, if you have any kind of, prior condition, and let's be honest, North Americans are pretty sick. We have the highest rates of obesity, asthma, heart disease. I mean, we eat garbage. And most people get zero exercise. We're all in front of our computers and screens. We're all sitting in front of the TV. Man, it is we are not healthy people. So this virus is going to hit us harder. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just my common sense, my 2 cents on that. So the fourth thing that I've learned is true is that the government was not prepared for this. Now, of course, the media and the opposition parties are standing up and screaming, and they're Trump is a monster, and they're just going crazy trying to score political points off that, which is disgusting, by the way. Anybody who's trying to score political points off this, Trump was definitely caught off guard by this. There's no question about it. He definitely downplayed it in the beginning, and, he had to be sort of coerced into, doing what was obviously needed to be done. But we all were. Okay, so let me remind you that 1 week ago, kids were getting ready to go to school on Sunday, and, and that was here. Some of you guys were already probably had your school canceled, and major concert events were canceled. Just 7 days ago, we were living a normal life. It was about this time on Sunday last week that I found out that school was canceled. We just did not know what was going to happen here. So blaming the government for being unprepared, I mean, governments are always unprepared for everything. It's basically they're designed that way. I mean, they're not designed on purpose that way, I don't know. But I mean, the FDA wasn't approving tests, and there was just so much red tape around, getting these things ready in time. It's kind of like deploying a military unit. There is so much paperwork and so much little memos that need to be sent. I mean, I'm a soldier. I know. Every time we go on an exercise, they're planning for those exercises 3 months in advance. So, I mean, the government does not act quickly, and they can't act quickly because they're just too bulky. And the private market needs to be given more leeway to deal with these things, so that the private markets need to be able to create testing, to work on vaccinations, to work on, other measures for treatments, and to experiment with those treatments without having to go through the Food and Drug Administration or the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. And we need people, able to go and print ventilators or print the valves for ventilators. So, we need to get rid of all of these things that are getting in the way of that. That's what my takeaway is from that. And the fifth thing is I am now seeing this. I already knew this, but I think many people are able to ignore this because things were good up until now. But we are a society based on debt. Our economy is literally based on debt, just-in-time delivery. Nobody saves any money. Nobody has food stored, and that is leaving us incredibly vulnerable. Just imagine if World War II broke out today, it would be mayhem. Like, literally mayhem. Like, when World War II broke out, when it did, in 1939, people were, definitely concerned, but, people weren't running to the store and buying every, roll of toilet paper in sight. People actually had some savings. There was very little consumer debt. Companies weren't in debt, and the government was not hugely in debt. The income tax was actually brought in based on the need to pay for the war, and it was paid for with bonds. People bought victory bonds. So things have changed hugely, and we now live in a society based on debt, where most of the population, if they didn't have a paycheck for 2 weeks, they're done. They're bankrupt. Nobody has any money saved up whatsoever, and that leaves the whole thing incredibly vulnerable. So when the government just floods the economy with free money, which is what's happening now, they're printing $1 trillion a day and putting it into the banking system. You're going to see some inflation like we've never seen before. That's going to have an effect, okay? So, on to things that you can do. Now that I've really, put a real super sour look on it, okay, there are some things that you can do to mitigate the disaster for yourself. And maybe even make your business more resilient. This is not going to be an amazing year for business. You're not going to make, $1 million. You're probably, if you work really hard, you might be able to do as well as you did last year, but you're going to have to work a lot harder to get there. But hey, you know what? We've got time. We're all sitting in our homes right now. Or many of us are. I'm not. I'm still at work because I apparently am, someone who can be spared. So anyway, the first thing that you need to do, save as much money as you literally can spare, okay? If you had any plans to go on any massive vacations, okay, cancel that. I know, the airline industry is going to be in pain for a while. Yes, they'll go bankrupt. Somebody will buy all those airplanes. Those airplanes are still going to be used, okay? It's just they'll have a different owner. It's not the end of the world if an airline goes out of business. Lots of things have gone out of business, but the production and all of the capital that they own doesn't disappear. It's just that someone else buys it for cheaper, and the people who invested the money in that business, they go, belly up. Their loans go defunct, and the bank takes the loss in those. And it incentivizes the bank in a normal society to not make huge loans to companies that are vulnerable to these kinds of things. But you, dear listener, you do not have to be vulnerable. You can save as much money as you can spare right now, okay? And I'm talking about for your own needs. So, if you're accustomed to eating steak, if you're accustomed to eating out, I understand, the restaurants desperately they want your business right now. I'm still going to a few restaurants, mostly local ones, but I'm cutting back significantly, okay? I'm sorry. But if you launched a restaurant in a small town, you had to know that it was a risky thing to do. And if your restaurant goes out of business, as many of them do, and they go out of business in good times as well as the bad, I cannot throw money at businesses that are probably going to go out of business anyway. And that is just the German in me speaking about the practical reality of the situation. I cannot bail you out. Okay? As much as I commiserate with your anxiety about what's the future, I cannot bail out restaurants by eating out. And I'm restricting my eating out a lot. I'm trying to shop as cheaply as I can. It's a bit tough now because I do not want to find myself in these big grocery stores, so I'm just going to our local one. But I'm looking for any place that I can save money. Any place at all. So I've told everybody in the house, I'm like, listen, no pointless expenditures. Don't go shopping on Amazon for this or that. If you want to buy some books or something like that, that's fine. I buy audiobooks because that keeps me occupied. Stuff like that, a computer game or something like that, that's fine. But we're trying to be as miserly as possible, and then we're going to invest the extra money that we save, because right now the price of investments is ultra cheap. The last I looked, actually I'm going to look up the price of silver right now just so I can tell you. So I noticed that, let's see here, $12.59 is the spot price of silver. It has not been that cheap in my lifetime. Ever. Silver is cheap, gold is cheap. I would buy silver, to be honest with you. But there's also mining stocks, oil stocks. I mean, these things are all heavily discounted right now. I mean, you could just get into a high yield mutual fund. I've got one. It's my sort of catch-all. Like, if I got any extra money, I throw it in there. It went down a ton. So when I buy into it, every dollar that I invest in that mutual fund right now is probably going to turn into $1.30 in 2 years. And maybe it will take that 2 years for all of those gains to come back, but they will. And the inflation is going to, of course, take away the value of that money. So, I mean, you might be just sort of fighting inflation here, but, investing that money is better than just holding on to it in cash, because inflation will steal that. Don't worry about paying off debt right now. Make sure you have some money to spare, and make sure that it's invested in something that's going to grow faster than inflation. And something like silver, gold, but don't put everything in there. Anyway, I'm not an investment broker. If you want to know somebody who's talking about investments and who's very smart about this, listen to Peter Schiff. If you don't know who Peter Schiff is, well, I'm going to put a link in the description. Let me make a note of that right now, so that you'll know. He's a smart guy. I've been listening to a lot of Peter Schiff. All right, so the second thing that you need to do, you need to work harder than you have in the last 10 years. Okay, this is not the time to sit and watch Netflix. I know that everybody else in the world is doing that. Let them do that. I don't mean don't sit and watch Netflix, but I mean, if you have time right now, take some of that time, focus like a laser on building your business. And I know that it's slow right now. It's about half normal. I'm still seeing sales though. Even though Amazon won't let me send any new stock until the 6th of April, I'm still seeing people buying things. It's just about half of what it would be normally. And you know what? Over the last 12 months, I'm up 70% over the year before. And I think when this is all over, we're going to see a decent rebound. It may not come back to where it was before. So, put your mind on that. But if you have, let's say that you started with 1,000 listings and you're making this many sales, well, if you work hard, build up another 5,000 listings, then you may not get, 5 times as many sales, but you'll get few more, right? So building your business, adding new listings is going to make a difference later on down the road. We can expand our business very easily. This is an easy business to expand. It almost takes no work in many cases. Well, it takes work, but it doesn't cost a lot of money. In many cases, it's free. All right, so the third thing that I'm going to tell you to do, and this is advice that I am taking for myself, and I'm forcing my family to do this, is stay healthy, get exercise, maintain some type of social contact with people, even if you're just 10 feet away from your neighbor and you're chatting outside. That's safe and it's healthy, right? Getting outdoors is safe and it's healthy to do. As long as you're not like going and playing rugby, everybody piling on top of each other, you're maintaining, like 6 feet of distance. 6 feet is pretty small. I know most people who are close socially, they'll stay about 3 feet apart. Well, just mentally tell yourself that you want to double that distance. So if you're like, hey guys, we're going to have a little barbecue in the backyard. I've set up a bunch of chairs. They're all 6 feet apart, or even in the front yard. Have everybody come in and you sit down and you just don't get too close to each other. That's safe and it's healthy. And everybody needs more vitamin D. We need more sunshine. For Pete's sake, staying indoors is not healthy for you. It's not what we're meant to do. And I'm irritated beyond words that I keep seeing these infographics and memes about, oh, don't let kids go to the park, keep them indoors, it's safer indoors. Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, there's a line here, and we've gone way past that of where we're making kids more unhealthy while trying to keep them healthy, right? Keeping our kids indoors is going to make them fat and lazy, and their immune system is going to be severely depressed. And then if the virus comes around, they're going to be much more likely to get it. Okay? Think about that. This is not just a medical problem. It's a social welfare. It's a mental thing. Everything needs to work together to make this go away. All right? So the fourth thing that you can do is, well, right now, and I was thinking about this before, everybody is, stuck indoors. There's not a lot of contact. People aren't going out, and they are consuming content at a immense rate. People are playing online games. They're watching YouTube videos. They're watching Netflix. People want to hear. They want to watch things. They want to listen to things because it keeps them occupied and it keeps their mind off what's going on. And if you're good at content creation, if you have a business, if part of your business is content creation, let's say that you have a nonprofit organization and you sell print on demand as a side thing, you need to start expanding your content creation. So put a live stream out, put a couple of extra videos out, just do everything possible to get more people listening to you. You almost have a captive audience right now, so take advantage of that. So I don't really know how that would play out in a print-on-demand situation, except if you're using print-on-demand as part of your, part of your business model. It's not the entire thing, but this does apply if you're running paid traffic. Okay, if you're running paid traffic, you're going to see a pretty decent, return on your investment if you're running ads and creating content. So one of the strategies that people have been using for print on demand is they will create a Facebook page or an Instagram page or a Pinterest account or all three. I mean, you can use the same content for all three of those accounts. And you center it around something that people enjoy and that they're passionate about. So right now, I can only imagine that people are thinking about springtime and they're just dying to get outside and go, camping and all that stuff. So if you have a camping Facebook page or an outdoor themed thing, I mean, start, pumping people up for that, right? And getting them excited to go out and do the thing that they love so much. Maybe if it's skiing, they probably, you're not going to get people too excited about that. But I mean, if it's water skiing, then you might have something there. So obviously it's in the context of the time of year it is. But I mean, adding more content and really just amping that up is going to get a lot more eyeballs on your products. If you're putting products and advertising them to your people, you're going to get a lot more eyeballs on those products. And it's free traffic. So that's a fantastic way to take advantage of the fact that everybody's locked inside. All right, so the last thing I'm going to tell you here is this. You need to understand, we all need to understand, okay? The experts are guessing about how this will play out. So I have a doctor, and she's a Chinese. I don't want to call her a girl. I've known her for a long time. She's not a girl anymore. She's a woman. But she is, constantly posting stuff, and everybody's trying to guess, how this is going to play out. And she's like, we're going to need to do this for 12 to 18 months. And I was kind of debating with her on that. I'm like, listen, we can't do this for 12 to 18 months. We're going to have to find some middle ground here. So that's made me realize that the experts are just guessing about how this will play out. And some of them are like, oh, this will disappear in the summer. But I don't think it's going to. You're going to see this come back in the fall if it does disappear for the summer. Okay, the virus is not going away. We just need to live with the virus. We need to learn how to go about our business while this virus kind of gets around us. So maybe we just figure something out for that. I don't even know what we could do, and I don't want to speculate. But the odds, which is history, when you look at other outbreaks, what do you see? Well, in recent history, we see that the outbreak spreads, people freak out a little bit, everybody starts doing whatever they need to do to keep it camped down, then we go back to kind of a normal life. So the odds favor that scenario. Never in history have we seen one of these diseases that come from China. And let's be honest, like they're coming from China, okay? I'm not calling this the Chinese virus or the Kung flu, although that is hilarious. By the way, I mean, if you want to say that the Germans started World War II, and I'm German, I'll agree with you on that. I mean, if you're Chinese, you need to agree that your government really botched this. I mean, that's why we're here. It's because your government tried to cover it up, and it backfired terribly. But, I mean, all of these viruses coming out of China, every time it's happened, it's never hit, it's never killed 60 million people. This might be the worst that's ever come out of this. But, I mean, it's never, the worst case scenario never hits. The best case scenario never happens, and the worst case scenario never happens. Okay? So, you need to just internally channel that realization. Get some woo-saw in your life. I don't know if you've ever seen Bad Boys. Mike Lowry's like, woo-saw. So just chill out, okay? Realize that everybody's guessing about how this is going to play out. And that even the people who know and they're looking at the medical numbers, they're subject to the panic that everyone else is getting too. The doctor that I referred to, she is concerned about this. I'm not saying she's panicking, but she is definitely, experiencing some of the same anxiety that everyone else is experiencing. And I understand that. She's watching people die, on hospital beds. So I understand that. And I don't blame her for that. But I just don't see the worst case scenario hitting us. Now, if it does, well, then it does, right? There's nothing I can do to change it. I'm just going to keep doing what I do now. And I'm going to trust that God will protect me. So, all right, so I got some action items for you guys. I know this has gone a little bit longer, but hopefully, you're all sitting in your homes right now, enjoying some time with your family or Skyping with somebody. You got a little extra time to listen to me ramble on about this. All right, so I got some action items, some takeaways. So, in the next 2 weeks, make creating listings your number one activity. Make building your business a real priority. Mother's Day, Father's Day. Those are still coming. I mean, we've all forgotten about it, but it's still happening. Okay? Spring. Spring is coming. Gardening, summer activities, water skiing, hiking, camping. Those are all fantastic things to start creating designs around. People are going to love them. T-shirts are going to be fire. People are going to want t-shirts. And shopping online is going to become the thing that everybody wants to do, right? So start putting those listings out there because you're going to start seeing shopping happening, especially after some of the lockdowns get a little bit released or a little bit, less restrictive, we're going to be springing back a little bit. So get ready for that. Be prepared for when that happens, because it's going to come up real quick. All right. I feel better. I'm experiencing less stress. I'm going to go out, take my family outside. I'm going to do some exercise outside. My gym has shut down, but, I've just been running outdoors. And honestly, I feel like running outdoors is amazing. I'm not a huge fan of running, so I don't run far. But, man, I feel so good afterwards, and the sun really helps. I'm feeling optimistic, guys, and I hope you are too. So that's it for today's episode. We'll talk to you in a week. Cheers.